My dear friends, we are here to explore, to understand, and to embody the profound truth of knowing your worth. Now, you might ask, Neville, what do you mean by knowing your worth? Let me tell you, it is not merely a matter of self-esteem or confidence as the world understands it. No, it goes far deeper than that. To know your worth is to recognize and claim your divine nature, to understand that you are not separate from the great I am, but are in fact one with it. You see, my dear friends, you are not just a physical being walking upon this earth. You are consciousness itself, individualized. You are God in expression, the very power that created the universe, localized in human form. This is your true worth, and it is infinite, boundless. But how many of you truly live in this awareness? How many of you walk through your days fully cognizant of the divine power that resides within you? I dare say, not many. And why is this? It is because you have forgotten your true nature. You have allowed the appearances of the outer world to dictate your sense of worth. Let me share with you a fundamental truth. The outer world is nothing more than a reflection of your inner states. It is a mirror showing you the contents of your own consciousness. If you see limitation, lack, or unworthiness in your life, it is because these states exist within you. But remember, these are not your true nature. They are simply states you have assumed, beliefs you have accepted. Now, you might be thinking, but Neville, I've tried positive thinking, I've recited affirmations, I've visualized success, and yet I still don't feel worthy. My dear friends, let me assure you, knowing your worth goes far beyond these surface level techniques. It is not about convincing yourself of your worth through repetition or force. It is about awakening to the truth that has always been. You see, you cannot become worthy. You already are worthy. Your task is not to achieve worth, but to recognize and embody the worth that is inherently yours. It is to shed the false beliefs and limitations that have obscured your true nature. So how do we do this? How do we come to know our true worth? The answer lies in what I call the law of assumption. This law states that you become what you assume yourself to be. If you persist in assuming a state, it must and will become your reality. Now, when I speak of assumption, I do not mean mere wishful thinking or daydreaming. I speak of a deep, unshakable knowing. It is the feeling of already being that which you desire to be. It is living from the end, experiencing now what you would experience if your desire were already fulfilled. In the context of knowing your worth, this means assuming the state of one who is fully aware of their divine nature. It means feeling now what you would feel if you truly knew, beyond all doubt, that you are one with the infinite power of the universe. It means living, moving, and having your being in the awareness of your... But how do we make this assumption? How do we shift our consciousness to this elevated state? The key lies in your imagination. Your imagination is not some frivolous faculty for idle fantasy. It is the very workshop of creation. It is through your imagination that you can transcend the limitations of your current state and enter into the reality of your choosing. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. And as you exhale, feel yourself relaxing, letting go of all tension and resistance. Now imagine yourself as you would be if you truly knew your worth. See yourself moving through the world with unshakable confidence, not born of ego, but of a deep knowing of your divine nature. Feel the peace that comes from knowing that you are one with the source of all creation. Experience the joy that arises when you recognize that all possibilities are open to you. Sense the love that flows through you when you understand that you are a unique and invaluable expression of the divine. Hold this image, this feeling, this knowing in your consciousness. Let it permeate every cell of your being. This, my dear friends, is the state of one who knows their worth. And as you persist in this assumption, as you continue to live from this state, you will find your outer world beginning to reflect this inner knowing. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Neville, this seems too simple. Surely knowing my worth can't just be a matter of imagination and assumption. Let me assure you, there is nothing more powerful than your assumption. The world you see around you, with all its seeming solidity, is nothing more than an outpicturing of the assumptions you hold in your consciousness. You see, consciousness is the only reality. All that you perceive as real and solid in your world is simply consciousness objectified. Your body, your circumstances, your relationships, all of these are but reflections of your state of consciousness. And your sense of worth, or lack thereof, is a pivotal part of that consciousness. When you truly know your worth, when you live from the assumption of your divine nature, you set in motion a complete reorganization of your world. People will respond to you differently. Opportunities will open up before you. Circumstances that once seemed insurmountable will dissolve or transform. Why? Because you have changed the cause and the effect must follow. But let me caution you, this is not about manipulating the world or others to boost your ego. True worth knows no comparison, no competition. When you truly know your worth, you have no need to prove it to anyone. You have no need to diminish others to feel better about yourself. Instead, you naturally lift others up. You recognize in them the same divine nature that you have recognized in yourself. Now, some of you might be wondering, Neville, if I'm truly one with the divine, why don't I feel it? Why do I struggle with feelings of unworthiness? My dear friends, these feelings of unworthiness are not your true self. They're simply states that you have unconsciously assumed and perpetuated. You see, from the moment of your birth, you have been bombarded with messages about your worth or lack thereof. Society, family, education, media, all of these have contributed to shaping your beliefs about yourself. And over time, you have internalized these messages, accepting them as truth. But I tell you now, these limiting beliefs are not the truth of who you are. They are simply stories you have been telling yourself, assumptions you have been living from. And just as you have assumed these limiting states, you can assume the state of one who knows their truth. Remember, the power to change your life lies not in the world around you, but in your own consciousness. It is not about changing things on the outside, but about changing your perception, your assumption on the inside. As you change your concept of self, as you assume the state of one who knows their worth, the outer world must conform to reflect this new assumption. Now, I want to address a concern that often arises when we speak of knowing our worth. Some of you might be thinking, but Neville, isn't it selfish or egotistical to focus so much on my own worth? Let me assure you, there is nothing selfish about recognizing and embodying your true nature. When you truly know your worth, when you live from the awareness of your divine nature, you naturally become a blessing to the world around you. You see, when you know that you are one with the source of all creation, you understand that all others are too. You recognize the divine in every person you meet, in every circumstance you encounter. This recognition leads to a profound shift in how you interact with the world. Instead of coming from a place of lack or need, you come from a place of fullness and love. Instead of seeking to get, you seek to give. For you know that in giving, you are giving to yourself. For all is one in the divine mind. Moreover, by knowing and embodying your worth, you give others permission to do the same. You become a living example of what is possible when one recognizes their true nature. In this way, knowing your worth becomes an act of service to all of humanity. But let me be clear. Knowing your worth is not a one-time event. It is not something you achieve and then are done with. It is a continuous practice, a way of being that you must choose again and again, moment by moment. For the world will constantly present you with experiences that seem to challenge your worth, that tempt you to fall back into old patterns of thinking and being. This is where the power of persistence comes in. You must persist in your assumption of worth even when the outer world seems to contradict it. You must hold fast to the truth of your being even when circumstances appear to deny it. For remember, the outer world is but a reflection. It cannot help but conform to your persistent assumption. So how do we persist in this assumption? How do we maintain our knowing of our worth in the face of life's challenges? The key lies in what I call the law of reversibility. This law states that while your outer world naturally reflects your inner states, you can also use your outer actions to reinforce and strengthen your inner assumptions. In other words, act as though you know your worth, even if you don't fully feel it yet. Carry yourself with the dignity of one who knows they are a divine being. Speak with the authority of one who understands their oneness with the source of all creation. Make decisions from the standpoint of one who recognizes their infinite value. As you persist in these outer actions, you will find your inner state naturally aligning with them. For the inner and the outer are not truly separate, but are two aspects of the same reality, consciousness expressed. Now I want to address another question that often arises. Neville, if I truly knew my worth, wouldn't I already have everything I desire? Wouldn't my life be perfect? My dear friends, knowing your worth does not mean that you will never face challenges or that every desire will instantly manifest. What it does mean is that you will approach these challenges and desires from a completely different perspective. When you know your worth, you understand that no challenge is greater than the divine power within you. You recognize that every experience, even those that seem negative, is an opportunity for growth and expansion. You see your desires not as things to be grasped at or struggled for, but as natural expressions of your divine nature, already fulfilled in the realm of infinite possibility. Moreover, knowing your worth shifts your focus from what you lack to what you already are. Instead of constantly seeking for something outside yourself to make you feel worthy, you recognize that you are already complete, already whole. Your worth is not determined by what you have or what you do, but by who you are. This shift in perspective brings with it a profound peace and contentment. It doesn't mean you stop desiring or striving for things, but rather that your desires and actions come from a place of fullness rather than lack. You create, achieve not to prove your worth, but as a joyful expression of the worth you already know you possess. Now, let us delve deeper into the practical application of knowing your worth. How do we bring this knowing into our daily lives? How do we make it more than just an intellectual concept, but a lived reality? The first step is to become aware of your current assumptions about your worth. Pay attention to your thoughts, your self-talk, your emotional reactions to situations. Notice when you feel unworthy or inferior. Observe the situations that trigger feelings of inadequacy. This awareness is crucial, for you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. Once you have become aware of these limiting assumptions, the next step is to consciously choose a new assumption. This is where your imagination comes into play. Imagine how you would think, feel, and act if you truly knew your worth. What would your self-talk be like? How would you carry yourself? How would you interact with others? Create a vivid, detailed mental image of this version of yourself, the self that knows its true worth. Feel the emotions associated with this state. Experience the confidence, the peace, the joy that comes from knowing your divine nature. Make this imaginal act as real and vivid as possible. Now here's the crucial pause. You must live from this new assumption. You must persist in the feeling of being this version of yourself, even when your outer world is not yet caught up. Remember, your outer world is a reflection of your inner state. As you persist in this new assumption, your outer world must conform to reflect it. This persistence requires faith. Not blind faith, but the faith that comes from understanding the laws of mind. It requires you to trust in the reality of your imaginal act more than the evidence of your physical senses. For remember, what you see in the physical world is but the effect. The cause lies in your consciousness. As you persist in this new assumption, you will likely face doubts and challenges. Old patterns of thinking and feeling will attempt to reassert themselves. This is natural and to be expected. When this happens, do not fight against these old patterns. Simply observe them, acknowledge them, and then gently return your attention to your new assumption of worth. It's also important to surround yourself with reminders of your true nature. This could be in the form of affirmations, but not mere surface-level positive statements. Instead, use statements that remind you of your divine nature, of your oneness with the source of all creation. Statements like I am, that I am or I, and the Father are one can be powerful reminders of your true worth. Additionally, seek out teachings, books, and experiences that reinforce your understanding of your divine nature. Immerse yourself in the wisdom of those who have realized their oneness with the divine. Let their words and experiences inspire and guide you on your own journey of self-realization. But remember, while external teachings can be helpful, the ultimate authority on your worth is you. No one else can give you your worth or take it away. It is your divine birthright, inherent in your very being. Your task is simply to recognize and claim it. Now, as you begin to truly know your worth, you may notice changes in your relationships. Some people in your life may react positively to your newfound sense of worth, while others may seem uncomfortable or even hostile. This is because your shift in consciousness disturbs the equilibrium of your existing relationships. Do not be alarmed by this. It is a natural part of the process of transformation. Some relationships may need to be released, while others will transform to align with your new state of being. Trust that as you persist in your new assumption, your outer world, including your relationships, will reorganize itself to reflect your new state of consciousness. Moreover, as you come to know your true worth, you will naturally attract people and circumstances that align with this knowing. You will find yourself in the company of those who recognize and honor their own divine nature and who can see and appreciate the divinity in you. Now, I want to address a common misconception about knowing your worth. Some people believe that truly knowing their worth would mean never experiencing negative emotions or challenges. This is not the case. Knowing your worth doesn't mean you become immune to the full spectrum of human experience. What it does mean is that you approach all experiences, positive and negative, from a place of innate worthiness. You understand that your worth is not determined by external circumstances or fleeting emotions. You recognize that even in moments of sadness, fear, or anger, your fundamental nature remains divine and worthy. This understanding allows you to move through life's challenges with grace and resilience. Instead of being knocked off balance by every difficulty, you stand firm in the knowledge of who you truly are. You see challenges not as punishments or signs of your unworthiness, but as opportunities for growth and expansion. Furthermore, knowing your worth allows you to experience joy and success more fully. When you know that you are inherently worthy, you can receive life's blessings without guilt or fear. You understand that abundance is your natural state, and you allow yourself to experience it fully. Now, let's explore how knowing your worth affects your creative power. You see, when you truly know your worth, you tap into the infinite creative power of the universe. You recognize that this power is not something separate from you, but is the very essence of who you are. This recognition liberates your creative faculties. No longer do you create from a place of lack or need, trying to prove your worth or fill a perceived void. Instead, you create from a place of fullness, as a joyful expression of your divine nature. When you know your worth, you understand that you are not a passive recipient of life circumstances, but the active creator of your reality. You recognize that your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions are the building blocks of your experience. And armed with this knowledge, you begin to consciously create the life you desire. This doesn't mean that every thought instantly manifests in your physical reality. The process of creation operates according to divine timing, which may not always align with your human expectations. But when you know your worth, you trust in this divine timing. You have faith that what is for your highest good will manifest at the perfect moment. Moreover, knowing your worth allows you to dream bigger. When you understand that you are one with the source of all creation, you realize that nothing is truly impossible for you. You begin to set goals and hold visions that may seem outrageous to others, but which you know are simply expressions of your divine nature. But remember, the goal is not to achieve things in order to feel worthy. The goal is to achieve and create as an expression of the worth you already know you possess. This subtle shift in perspective changes everything. It transforms the process of achievement from a struggle to a joyful unfolding. Now let's address how knowing your worth affects your relationship with the concept of failure. In the worldly sense, failure is often seen as proof of unworthiness. But when you truly know your worth, you understand that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback and opportunities for growth. When you know your worth, you're not afraid to take risks or to make mistakes. You understand that your worth is not determined by your successes or failures, but by your inherent divine nature. This frees you to explore, to experiment, to push beyond your comfort zone. You see, every experience, whether deemed a success or failure by worldly standards, as an opportunity to learn, grow, and express your divine creativity. In conclusion, my dear friends, knowing your worth is not just about feeling good about yourself. It is about awakening to the truth of your being. It is about recognizing your oneness with the divine and living from that recognition. As you persist in this knowing, as you continue to assume the state of one who truly knows their worth, you will find your life transforming in ways you may have never thought possible. You will move through the world with a quiet confidence, a deep peace, and an unshakable joy. For you will know beyond all doubt that you are a divine being, infinite in potential, boundless in creativity, and worthy beyond measure. This is your true nature. This is your birthright. Claim it now and watch as your world transforms to reflect the magnificence of who you truly are.
Tonight, I want to share with you a profound truth about the power of your absence, about what happens in the consciousness of others when you simply disappear from their world. For in understanding this, you will understand the great law of consciousness and manifestation. Let me tell you about the first state they enter when you disappear, what I call the state of sudden awareness. In this state, those who took your presence for granted suddenly become acutely key aware of the space you once occupied. It's as if they've been sleeping, and your absence becomes their awakening. In the Bible, it states they knew not what they had until it was taken away. This is not mere poetry. This is a precise description of how consciousness operates when sudden faced with sudden absence. Consider this profound truth. When you disappear from someone's world, you create what I call the vacuum of consciousness. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does consciousness. Your absence creates a void that must be filled with new awareness. Let me share with you the second state, what I call the state of heightened value. When you disappear, those who undervalued your presence suddenly begin to recall every moment, every interaction, every value you brought to their world. Your absence becomes a magnifying glass through which they see your true worth. This is what the scripture means when it says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." Your absence forces others to wait, to contemplate, to renew their understanding of your value in their world. The third state is what I call the state of emotional realization. In this state, those from whom you've disappeared begin to feel emotions they suppressed or took for granted while you were present. Your absence becomes the key that unlocks their buried feelings. Consider this deeply when you remove yourself from someone's world. You create what I call the mirror of absence. In this mirror, they begin to see not just their loss of you, but their own role in creating that loss. The fourth state is what I call the state of retrospective clarity. In this state, those left behind begin to review every interaction, every moment, every word exchanged. Your absence becomes the lens through which they clearly see what was once blurred by familiarity. This is what the Bible means when it says, "Now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face." Your disappearance removes the darkness of familiarity and brings everything into sharp focus. Let me share with you the fifth state, what I call the state of projected futures. Those from whom you disappeared begin to imagine futures without you, and in doing so, they realize the value of the futures they could have had with you. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think their presence is what makes the biggest impact. But I tell you this, sometimes it is your absence that creates the most profound transformation in others' consciousness. Let me share with you the sixth state that emerges in their consciousness, what I call the state of internal questioning. When you disappear, those left behind enter a profound state of self-examination. They begin to question not just your absence, but their own role in creating it. In the Bible, it states, "Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith." This self-examination becomes inevitable when you create the void of your absence. They cannot help but look within. Consider this deep truth. Your disappearance creates what I call the mirror of responsibility. In this mirror, they see not just their loss of you, but their own actions, their own choices, their own consciousness that contributed to your departure. The seventh state is what I call the state of emotional amplification. Every feeling they ever had about you becomes intensified. If they took you for granted, that realization becomes painful. If they valued you, that value increases exponentially. This is what the scripture means when it says, that which is done in secret shall be shouted from the housetops. Your absence reveals what was hidden in their consciousness while you were present. Let me share with you what happens in the eighth state, what I call the state of revised memory. They begin to remember you differently. Every interaction gets re-examined. Every moment gets revalued. Every exchange gets reinterpreted through the lens of your absence. You see, most people make this crucial error. They think memories are fixed and unchangeable. But I tell you this, memories are constantly being revised by present consciousness. And your absence creates a new consciousness through which all memories are filtered. Consider what I call the law of conscious absence. When you disappear from someone's world, you create a void that their consciousness must fill with something. Often it fills with realizations they avoided while you were present. The ninth state is what I call the state of future loss. They begin to feel not just their present loss of you, but all the future moments they will miss with you. Your absence becomes not just a current reality, but a future deprivation. This is what the Bible means when it says they shall look upon him whom they have pierced. Your absence becomes the pierce that makes them look, really look, at what they had and what they've lost. Let me share with you another profound aspect of this truth. When you disappear, you create what I call the vacuum of possibility. In this vacuum, those left behind must confront not just their loss of you, but their loss of all possible futures with you. Think about this deeply. Your disappearance creates a space in their consciousness that cannot be filled by anything else. This space becomes a constant reminder of what they had and what they lost through their own choices or actions. Consider what I call the law of conscious reflection. When you disappear, you force others to see themselves in relation to your absence. They must confront their own behavior, their own choices, their own consciousness that contributed to losing you. This is what the scripture means when it says, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Your absence removes the darkness of familiarity and forces them to face themselves clearly. Let me share with you another dimension of this profound truth. Consider what I call the state of escalating awareness. As time passes after your disappearance, their consciousness of your absence doesn't diminish. It actually intensifies. In the Bible, it states, what I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in light. Your absence becomes the darkness that reveals truths they couldn't see in the light of your presence. Consider how they enter what I call the state of comparative loss. They begin to compare every new interaction, every new relationship, every new moment with the memories of you. Your absence becomes the standard against which everything else is measured. This is what the scripture means when it says, they shall run to and fro, seeking the word of the Lord. In their consciousness, they begin seeking what they lost when you disappeared. But they cannot find it because what they lost was unique to you. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious void. When you disappear, you create not just a physical absence, but an emotional and spiritual void that cannot be filled by anyone else. This void becomes a teacher, showing them exactly what they lost. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think time will diminish the impact of their absence. But I tell you this, time often intensifies the awareness of what was lost through your disappearance. Consider what I call the state of perpetual reminder. Everything in their world begins to remind them of you, places you went together, things you shared, conversations you had. Your absence becomes omnipresent through these reminders. This is what the Bible means when it says, their sins shall find them out. The consequences of their actions or inactions that led to your disappearance become increasingly apparent through these constant reminders. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the state of delayed recognition. Often, the full impact of your disappearance isn't felt immediately. Like a stone thrown into a pond, the ripples of your absence continue to spread outward, touching more and more areas of their consciousness. Think about this deeply. Your disappearance waits what I call the echo of absence. This echo reverberates through their consciousness, growing stronger rather than weaker with each repetition. Consider what happens in what I call the state of valuable contrast. Every new person they meet, Every new relationship they form stands in stark contrast to what they lost when you disappeared. Your absence becomes the standard against which all else is measured. This is what the scripture means when it says, they shall know them by their fruits. The fruits of your absence, the realizations, the regrets, the recognitions become increasingly apparent over time. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious amplification. When you disappeared, every quality you possess, every value you brought, every contribution you made becomes amplified in their consciousness. You see, while you were present, familiarity might have dulled their appreciation of these qualities. But your absence strips away this familiarity, leaving only the stark reality of what was lost. Consider what I call the state of perpetual comparison. They begin to compare everyone else to their memories of you, and these comparisons only serve to highlight what was unique and irreplaceable about your presence. Let me share with you what I call the state of progressive revelation. As time passes after your disappearance, new aspects of their loss continue to reveal themselves, like layers of an onion being peeled away. In the Bible, it states that which is hidden shall be revealed. Your absence becomes the revealer of truths they couldn't or wouldn't see while you were present. Consider what happens in what I call the state of emotional archaeology. They begin to dig through their memories, uncovering moments and meanings they hadn't fully appreciated before. Your disappearance becomes the tool that unearths these buried treasures. This is what the scripture means when it says, seek and ye shall find. But what they find in your absence is often not what they expected. They find the truth about themselves, their behavior, their choices. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, but when you disappear, you create a vacuum that cannot be filled by anyone else. This persistent emptiness becomes a constant teacher. You see, most people make this crucial error. They think they can quickly fill the void left by someone's disappearance. But I tell you this, some voids are meant to remain unfilled, serving as permanent reminders of what was lost. Consider what I call the state of perpetual learning. Every day without you becomes a lesson in value, in appreciation, in understanding what they had and what they lost through your disappearance. This is what the Bible means when it says line upon line, precept upon precept. The lessons of your absence continue to build upon each other, creating a growing understanding of their loss. Let me share with you another profound dimension, what I call the state of reverse perspective. In your absence, they begin to see everything from a new angle. What once seemed unimportant becomes crucial. What once seemed trivial becomes significant. Think about this deeply. Your disappearance creates what I call the mirror of truth. In this mirror, they see not just their loss of you, but their own role in creating that loss, their own responsibility in your departure. Consider what happens in what I call the state of emotional echo. Every memory of you creates an echo that reverberates through their consciousness, growing stronger rather than weaker with time. This is what the scripture means when it says, the last shall be first. The last moments they had with you, the last words they spoke to you, the last opportunities they missed. All these become first in their consciousness. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious intensity. When you disappear, the intensity of their feelings doesn't diminish with time. Instead, it often increases as they fully realize the magnitude of their loss. You see, while you were present, they might have taken certain qualities for granted. But in your absence, these qualities become magnified, highlighted, impossible to ignore. Consider what I call the state of perpetual discovery. They continue to discover new aspects of their loss, new dimensions of what they had, new realizations about what your presence meant in their life. Let me share with you what I call the state of emotional crystallization. In your absence, their feelings about you begin to crystallize and into clear, undeniable truths that they might have avoided while you were present. In the Bible, it states, now we see face to face. Your disappearance removes the veil of familiarity that obscured their true feelings, their true understanding of your value in their world. Consider what happens in what I call the state of perpetual presence through absence. Though physically absent, you become more present in their consciousness than ever before. Your disappearance creates a more powerful presence than your physical presence ever did. This is what the scripture means when it says being absent in body, but present in spirit. Your physical absence actually intensifies your spiritual and emotional presence in their consciousness. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious multiplication. When you disappear, every memory, every interaction, every moment shared becomes multiplied in significance. What once seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary in retrospect. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think absence diminishes presence. But I tell you this, true absence often creates a more powerful presence in consciousness than physical presence ever could. Consider what I call the state of eternal now. In your absence, all those moments they took for granted become eternally present in their consciousness. The past becomes their perpetual now, filled with the recognition of what they've lost. This is what the Bible means when it says, 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday. Time loses its normal progression in the consciousness of loss. Every memory becomes immediately present, immediately powerful. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the state of valuable contrast. Every new person they meet, every new relationship they form, stands in stark comparison to what they lost when you disappeared. Your absence becomes the standard against which all else is measured. And think about this deeply. Your disappearance creates what I call the vacuum of irreplaceability. They may try to fill this vacuum with other people, other relationships, other activities. But the unique shape of your absence cannot be filled by anything else. Consider what happens in what I call the state of perpetual revelation. Each day brings new realizations about what they lost when you disappear. Like waves on a shore, these realizations keep coming, each one bringing new understanding. This is what the scripture means when it says, deep calleth unto deep. The depth of their loss calls forth deeper and deeper realizations about what they had and what they lost through your disappearance. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious acceleration. As time passes, rather than their feelings diminishing, they often accelerate in intensity. The reality of their loss becomes more acute, more profound, more undeniable. You see, while you were present, they might have been able to ignore or deny their true feelings. But in your absence, these feelings become impossible to avoid or deny. Consider what I call the state of emotional archaeology. They begin to dig through their memories, uncovering layer after layer of meaning they hadn't recognized before. Your absence becomes the tool that reveals these hidden treasures. Let me share with you what I call a state of perpetual questioning. In your absence, they enter a state of constant self-interrogation. Why did they act as they did? Why didn't they appreciate what they had? Why didn't they see what was right before them? In the Bible it states, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. This self-examination becomes relentless when triggered by your disappearance. Every memory becomes a question, every past interaction a source of reflection. Consider what I call the state of emotional magnification. What might have seemed like small moments while you were present become magnified in your absence. A casual conversation becomes a precious memory. A shared laugh becomes a treasure. A simple gesture becomes profound. This is what the scripture means when it says, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. What they considered least important while you were present often becomes most important in your absence. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious reversal. In your absence, their entire perspective reverses. What they took for granted becomes precious. What they overlooked becomes central. What they dismissed becomes essential. You see, most people make this crucial error. They think they understand the value of something while it's present. But I tell you this, true value is often only realized through absence. Consider what I call the state of perpetual presence. Though physically absent, you become more present in their consciousness than ever before. Your disappearance creates a presence that permeates every aspect of their awareness. This is what the Bible means when it says the kingdom of heaven is within you. Your absence creates an internal kingdom of memories, realizations, and understanding that wasn't possible while you were physically present. Let me share with you another profound dimension, what I call the state of emotional echo. Every memory of you creates an echo that reverberates through their consciousness, growing stronger rather than weaker with each repetition. Think about this deeply. Your disappearance creates what I call the mirror of truth. In this mirror, they see not just their loss of you, but their own role in creating that loss, their own responsibility in your departure. Consider what happens in what I call the state of perpetual comparison. Every new experience, every new relationship, every new interaction gets compared to what they lost when you disappeared. Your absence becomes the standard against which all else is measured. This is what the scripture means when it says, they shall know them by their fruits. The fruits of your absence, the realizations, the regrets, the recognitions become increasingly apparent over time. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious intensification. When you disappear, the intensity of their feelings doesn't diminish with time. Instead, it often increases as they fully realize the magnitude of their loss. You see, while you were present, they might have been able to maintain certain illusions about their feelings, their behavior, their choices. But in your absence, these illusions become impossible to maintain. Consider what I call the state of emotional archaeology. They begin to dig through their memories, uncovering layer after layer of meaning they hadn't recognized before. Your absence becomes the tool that reveals these hidden treasures. Let me bring this profound understanding to its completion. Consider what I call the final state of transformative absence. Your disappearance ultimately becomes the catalyst for their complete transformation of consciousness. In the Bible, it states, all things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. Your absence creates this newness, this transformation, this complete shift in their consciousness. Let me share with you what I call the law of conscious completion. Through your disappearance, they come to a complete understanding, not just of what they lost, but of who they were, who they are, and who they must become. This is what the scripture means when it says, the truth shall make you free. The truth revealed through your absence becomes their pathway to a new consciousness, a new understanding, a new reality. Consider this final truth. Your disappearance creates what I call a state of eternal presence. Though physically absent, you become eternally present in their consciousness, teaching them lessons they couldn't learn in your physical presence. You see, this is the ultimate paradox. Sometimes the most powerful presence is absence. Sometimes the most profound teaching is silence. Sometimes the greatest gift is withdrawal. If you think about this deeply, your disappearance creates what I call the final mirror. In this mirror, they see not just what they lost, but who they must become because of that loss. This is what the Bible means when it says, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Your absence becomes the clarity through which they finally see themselves truly. Remember this eternal truth. Your disappearance is not just an ending, it's a beginning. It's not just a loss, it's a catalyst. It's not just an absence, it's a presence of the most profound kind. For in your physical absence, you create what I call the eternal presence of truth. This truth continues to teach, to reveal, to transform long after your physical presence has ended. This is the power of conscious absence. This is the gift of mindful disappearance. This is the truth of transformative withdrawal. Let this understanding guide you. Let this wisdom direct you. Let this truth transform you. For when you understand the power of your absence, you understand one of the most profound laws of consciousness, that sometimes the greatest presence is absence. The strongest statement is silence. The most powerful action. This is the law. This is the way. This is the truth. And so it is.